four main topics I'd like to get across to people here. First of all, to share some of my original thoughts on why I chose the Japanese market for my business. As Mark said, 21 years ago, I was in the position that many of you are in today, listening into this webinar. I was thinking about, should I take my business into the Japanese market? And there was one particular factor that came to my attention that really got me seriously thinking about it. So I'm going to share that with you. I've got some data on the trade going on between the UK and Japan. Some of that data was already shared previously, but I'll pick up on a few points that can add value to that. I'll then give you a quick overview on some of the tips that I've picked up from 20 years of doing business in Japan, and then I'll point you at some further resources. So this slide, when I spoke about why I eventually chose to sort of tackle the Japanese market and have a go at the Japanese market, it was when I first got my head around this particular slide and this set of data. And I realized there's a lot of information there, but the detail's not important. I can explain the principle to you. So if you imagine this is like a clock face, and if we start over at 3 o'clock, what we're actually doing here is we're comparing the GDP of Japanese regions with the GDP of other countries. So over there at 3 o'clock, we've got the Tokyo metropolitan region, and that has a GDP larger than the GDP of Canada and India. If we're going anti-clockwise, we go around to the top and we look at Hokkaido region, which I'm willing to bet is a region that a good number of people on this webinar haven't even heard of, the Hokkaido region. It has a GDP larger than that of Singapore. Going anti-clockwise, the Tohoku region has a GDP similar in size to Austria. Osaka has a GDP same size as the Netherlands. Shikoku region, probably another one that nobody's ever even heard of, has a GDP larger than Thailand. Kyushu region down the bottom has a GDP on par with Switzerland. The Shikoku region is on par with New Zealand, and the Chubu region is on par with the Netherlands. Now, just if you take nothing else away from today's webinar, think about that in terms of market size and market opportunity. And when I first saw that, I thought that's the reason that I need to tackle the Japanese market. This has already been touched on really well by Mark and Marie-Claire. They both touched on it. This new SEPA FTA agreement is now signed. This is something for you to think about, okay? I'm a very positive, enthusiastic Japan fan, and I will always give people a good message because Japan has been very, very kind to me over the last 20 years, and I've done very well in Japan. And it was great to hear the previous speaker, Nick, talking about the success he's enjoying there as well. But there needs to be a balance point, and I've tried to summarize it in this slide here because the Japanese market is not for everybody. There's no doubt about that, and we have to give the realistic advice on that. On one side of it, I would say that what you're dealing with is one language and one culture. One language right through the entire country. I just gave you a snapshot of the size of the market, but that's one language covering all of those regions, and one business culture, one business practice covers that region. It is one large, huge, lucrative market, as I just touched on, with one business practice. So you've got the culture to deal with and the business culture to deal with, but it's one business practice. Once you've understood that, once you've got your head around that, you can relate that to the entire market. I've put here one distribution network. Of course, it's not quite as simple as that, and it depends what sector and what industry you're in. In some cases, the distribution network can be a bit more complicated because there can be lots of layers there. But for example, if you're in the e-commerce business and you work out how to sell through e-commerce in Japan, you can tap into this huge market in one go. So it's case by case. There's one distribution network there. And it is, of course, an incredibly stable market with incredibly good business ethics. It's another reason why I really enjoy doing business in Japan, because the ethics of doing business there and the culture there is a wonderful one. So there's some of the positive reasons for you to think about and take away. On the balance point of that, when I spoke about, it's one language and it's one culture and one business practice, that understanding that culture is a complex thing. It is very, very different from the way we do business and the way we think. And it takes time to learn that culture. You have to invest time and energy and get support in learning it. So it is complex and it is very, very different. It's different in terms of geographic positioning. It's on the other side of the world, time zone difference, and of course the culture and language, incredibly different. And it takes time. There's no doubt that Japan is one of those markets where you cannot expect to get a quick win. You definitely have to have a long-term thought process and a long-term strategy. But of course, you get your payback over time, as was reflected again in the previous presentation. So it does take that long-term investment. So they're the balance points to really think about. And for you guys out there thinking about the Japanese market, ask yourself these questions. So just going to share a little bit of data. Some of this you did get a little bit earlier, but I think it's good to kind of get this overview. I will just mention as a caveat, this data I'm sharing, you can see at the bottom, it's up to the end of Q1 2020. So up to the sort of, 12 months ago. Taking that out of the equation, this is up to the end of Q1 2020, this data. There are around 10,000 UK VAT registered businesses exporting goods to Japan. So for those of you that are just starting out on the journey or considering whether or not you should do this and whether you can do it, rest assured that 10,000 other companies from the UK have worked out how to do it and are currently trading in Japan. So a decent number are making that journey over there. And what I'm going to move on to now is really distilling down 21 years of experience of setting up and running my own businesses in Japan to a few key tips. If you need further help on this, reach out to me or any of my colleagues, and I'll be happy to have a further chat and go through it in more detail. But I'll share a few little tips for you here. First thing is the message I gave a little earlier. Absolutely take time to learn the business culture. It's one of the biggest mistakes people make is to rush in without learning the business culture. And it's one of those examples where there's no point in swimming against the tide. Do not come in with a thought process of the way we currently do business in the UK and the way you do business, that it will automatically work in Japan. I can guarantee it probably will not. And don't swim against the tide, swim with the tide. And in order to swim with the tide, you've got to learn the local business culture. There's loads of great ways to pick it up, loads of resources out there, but it does need some time and effort to get your head around that. Second point is absolutely do your research and your homework before you start making your strategic decisions. Gather information about the market opportunity, the route to market, the competitive landscape. Get all that information in place. There's great ways to do it. Obviously, the Mark and the team in Invest Northern Ireland can help. Marie Claire's team at the DIT trade team can help at the embassy, and of course with Export to Japan, I'll come onto that at the moment, and lots of other sources out there of how you can get help with this. Invest time in building relationships. That's one of the key things I learned is human relationships and developing trust, developing relationships, getting to know people is absolutely critical. Probably applies everywhere in the world, but absolutely in the Japanese market, it's really important. Quality is everything in what you do, and not just in your product and your service, but in your entire organization and in you as an individual. Through the Japanese eyes, they will look at that, they will assess that, they will take a view on the quality of everything you do, and do not underestimate the levels that it's important to get to in quality. It's really important in the Japanese eyes. Hard sales means no sales. And what I mean about that, these kind of techniques that we learn over here in the Western world about how to close the sale, how to make things happen, how to pin things down, how to be assertive, all of those things just don't work in Japan. It's a very, very different sales process, and the customer is absolutely king, if not God. The customer's in a really powerful position. But there are ways to learn of how you go through your sales process to work within that culture of working. And that comes back to the first point I made about learning the business culture. It's a very different sales process. Have that long-term investment strategy. I mentioned that, crucially important. No point in trying to get a quick win in Japan. It sometimes does happen. Some companies are lucky enough to do it, but most have to be in there for the long haul, but the return is really big. Take great care when you're selecting your partners, your reps, your agents, your distributors, or your employees. It's the most important decision you can make. The reason it's so important in Japan is it's very difficult to unpick it and undo it if you make a mistake. Because of this sort of long-term thinking again, and this high emphasis on relationship building, you need to get those things right because everything has a long-term view. You cannot chop and change between agents, distributors, hiring and firing staff and stuff like that. Just doesn't happen in Japan. So take care, get help, and make sure you make the right decisions up front. And then finally, put down roots and demonstrate commitment. And there's lots of ways of doing that. And it doesn't necessarily mean big expense and big budget. One thing I've learned over the years is very cost-effective ways of giving a very strong message to the Japanese customers about how you're serious about the market without necessarily having to put huge investment up front. And then you can scale it up as you get confidence and as the revenue starts to come. These are a couple of thoughts that I've picked up over the years that I love sharing with people because they're so meaningful. And either take a snapshot of this or have a look at these slides later so you can digest it. The two thoughts are, Japanese people have high expectations of quality, which matters more than price. And the second one is, the defining values are not price and profit, but relationships and trust. And I think if you digest those 2 points, that explains everything about what I was saying in the previous slide. Okay, if we move on to further resources, and then I'll close off and we can move on to the Q&A session. I'm going to introduce the Export to Japan platform. There's the URL right there, exporttojapan.co.uk. It's an online digital platform, was actually established in 2013, originally established by DIT or UKTI as it was branded back in those days. And it is a resource for people like you that are looking at the Japanese market and want further help. It's a not-for-profit resource, and it's a partnership between 4 strategic partners. And so far to date, since launch, we've now had over 500,000 visitors, and we have 11,000 members. By the way, membership is absolutely free. It's run on this not-for-profit basis. You guys can join up, become members. You can go and consume content on the site, get whatever you want out of the site. It's all free of charge for you to join and interact with, thanks largely to the sponsorship and the partnership we get with DIT. Very, very quickly, I'll just take you through a very quick navigation. We've spent a lot of time over the last 6 years working out how to make this as simple as possible. The 2 main routes into the site are to search by industry and the step-by-step guide, and I'll touch on those in a moment. There's then a partner program where you can get access to partners who can help you and the ability to send in any inquiries or any questions that you may have. But for the search by industry and the step-by-step guide, I'll just quickly take you through that. This is what happens if you click on the search by industry button. You are presented with this view, and it basically shows you what information and resources we've got on the site for your particular sector that you sit in, and you can drill down through here to get the information related to your sector that you sit in. So that's search by industry. The second option is the step-by-step guide, and this is geared towards wherever you are on your journey. So if you're at the early stage of just thinking about the market right now and you're looking for more information on the market or where to get started or getting some research done, you can click in here and find out how to do that. Or you may be at a much more complex stage where you're ready to set up a company or incorporate, or you need some legal help to file a patent or something like that. Again, there are steps on here that can take you in the right route to get information and get access to help on that. So that's the step-by-step guide.